Now we're going to look at finding the inverse function. We're going to look at different types of equations like linear, square root, fraction, cube root, cube equation. Now all these functions are one-to-one, and we pay close attention to the domain and range of the corresponding functions we're about to play with. Let me first find the inverse function of this linear equation. So I'm hoping you recognize that this is just y equals mx plus b. Okay? And we're going to answer the question, what is the domain and what is the range of this function? So really, what is my first step? Well, I'm going to replace my f of x symbol with y. This is my real first step. And then what am I going to do next? The second step is just going to be solve for x. In other words, I'm going to solve for whatever variable is the domain variable. Solve for x, basically solve for the domain variable. Okay, so I'll do that, which means just reversing everything you see here. So I'm going to start out with the equation. And notice I am solving for x, which means that the steps are always going to be the same. This is linear, so I'm going to subtract 3/5 from both sides, the result being this. I'm trying to isolate x, so first move any term that doesn't have this variable. So this is a constant, move that to the other side by adding or subtracting the terms. So remember, these terms you can only move by adding or subtracting. Next, I need to get rid of this factor, 3/2. And I could divide by 3/2, but because this is a fraction, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to, and I'm going to write this step out. So I'm not just going to show the result, but I'm going to write this step out. I'm going to multiply both sides by 3/2. So I'm going to multiply, is it 3/2? Yes, 3/2. So I got confused. So I'm going to write, again, this over here, this part, not 3/2, sorry, 2/3. What am I doing? I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of this number I'm trying to get rid of. So instead of dividing, I'm multiplying. Not by 3/2, but by 2/3. Again, the whole purpose here is just to make sure this coefficient goes away. You could go away by dividing or multiplying, and it doesn't really go away. If I were to divide by 3/2, I would get 1. 3/2 divided by 3/2 is 1. But the same can be achieved by multiplying by the reciprocal. 2/3 times 3/2 is 1. So I achieved the same feat. But what's the advantage here? I don't have to deal with a complex fraction. At that point, like on this side, I don't have to have this entire expression divided by 2/3, then having to deal with that. This cuts right to the chase, and I can now distribute the 2/3 if I wanted to. I'm going to on the left. So 2/3 y minus, and again, I'm going to just write this out in a moment so you see where everything is going. And on the right, I have 2/3 times 3/2 is 1. So there, I have solved for it. So let me just clean this up a little bit. I've got 2/3 y. 3 divided by 3 is a 1, so I'm left with 2/5. So I have done it. This is now the inverse function. But I'm going to now write it using the notation. My input variable is now y. And I write the rule of the equation here. Okay. So now notice the x got replaced by f inverse of y, and f inverse of y is equal to x. So where x was, I'm going to replace it with f inverse of y. Now, I'm going to again just make a mention. just once more step in some textbooks, as a matter of fact, a lot of textbooks, is to replace the x with the y and the y with the x. So in other words, the last step would be replace every y here with x, and why would they do something like that? Only so it looks nice, I suppose. So again, as mentioned, the x remains the domain variable, or representing the domain variable. But if x has a meaning and y has meaning, you can't just reverse these two things. It's not possible. It shouldn't be that. We'll do another one here. Find the inverse operation, inverse function of f of x equals 3 plus square root of 3/2 x minus 2. Fantastic. Oh, let's go back here. Sorry, I forgot already. What is the domain of f of x? So remember, the domain, this is a linear equation, so the domain of f of x is, now you recognize this as a linear equation, so it's negative infinity to infinity. That is the domain of f of x. Now, what's the range of f of x? Well, this one's an easy one, but all I need to do is look at my inverse operation. I can see the inverse function is also a linear equation. So remember, the domain of this inverse is the range of f of x. So domain of f inverse of x or y, I'm guessing right over here, is negative infinity to infinity also. So given that, the range of f of x is whatever I write down here. So that's pretty nifty. Once you find the inverse, you can find its domain, and then that becomes a range of the original function. So let's look at this example here.